you very much for all turning up tonight, and it's a great sort of honour and privilege for me to be here. I mean, it's a great institution, the Natural History Society, great history, just for wonderful, wonderful people. I am a little bit nervous tonight, simply because, judging by Georgia, if she's just one example, the audience is much more knowledgeable than me, which is always a bit of a worry. What I'm planning to do tonight is take you on a bit of a journey, a wildlife journey. We'll cover birds, we'll cover animals, we'll stay at home, we'll go abroad, we'll look at different photographic techniques. So hopefully there's something for everybody. On that journey, I've had thousands and thousands of failures, and also a lot of the animals and the birds, they're protected. A lot of Schedule 1 birds, you need licenses. I do have the appropriate licenses for all of these birds, so I won't say I've got the license for this bird, but trust me, I've got them. It might be useful just to have a little bit of background to sort of see where I came from. My childhood was in West Northumberland. I used to rake around the countryside with the two sons of a gamekeeper. That actually all ended pretty badly when I was in front of the police sergeant at Holtwhistle for shooting Albert through the cheek with a homemade bow and arrow on a game of sort of dare that went a bit wrong. It actually was a good shot. It should have been, actually went right through. Actually, it was good. When I was 16, I used to play hooky from school and go with Bobby Archer, who was a bit of a local character and also quite handy with his fists. And used to go ferreting with Bobby, and he had permission from the Narwith estate in Cumbria for hunting the rabbits because he got rid of the moles. And after about 2 months of this, I said to Bobby, I said, look, Bobby, I said, if you've got permission to do this, why have we always got to hide behind the wall and hide in the hedges when we see somebody? So obviously we were poaching. But that's probably where I learned my field skills, which was quite useful. Fast forward, joined the army and specialised in Arctic warfare, which I loved, absolutely loved. And I probably did about 70-odd cold weather expeditions, either leading them or going on them during that period. You always have a camera with you, got it around my waist there. That camera actually only lasted a day because it was minus 50. So it was that horrible dilemma, do you throw the camera away or carry it for 50 odd days? So yeah, you always have a camera. I did qualify as a polar guide, and one of the biggest privileges, a huge honour, was to guide Prince Harry and wounded soldiers to the South Pole. And I'm heavily involved with the Wildlife Trust, Northumberland Wildlife Trust, and they asked me to plant a flag at the South Pole. And when I pulled it out the tent, I was sharing the tent with Harry all the time. He said, oh, what's that flag? I said, oh, it's for red squirrels, we're promoting them. And this, for me, is the measure of the man. He said, oh, I'll come to Northumberland and I'll help you do that. And that was a private thing that he did. It wasn't an official visit. So, measure of the man. As I say, you always have your camera with you, and over the years I've had some great encounters. This was Ellesmere Island, Arctic wolves. They actually followed us for 3 days, which day one's exciting, day two's good, day three starts to get a bit wearing. I went to the back of the group just to see how close they would get, and you're talking 3 or 4 meters. They're just curious, they hadn't seen people. So basically, it coming from West Northumberland and a bit of a slow learner, it took me 40 years to work out that having a camera and 2 lenses was going to be lighter than a 150-kilo sledge. But eventually, about 8 years ago, the penny dropped. So now I'm actually a full-time wildlife photographer trying to give back to charity and enthuse other people with my photographs. And that's sort of where it's come from. Thinking about photography and conservation started to get me thinking about my photography and different aspects of it, and I'll probably share some of these different aspects of photography which might stimulate or hopefully stimulate some of you in a new direction. One of the biggest advantages of modern day photography is the aid to identifying birds. You know, you don't really need a camera to identify a two-barred crossbill, but for the more obscure species it's very useful. This was in Shetland Island, or Shetland rather, with two of my very good friends, Brian Thomason, who lives there, and Dave Super Cooper, who's on the British Birds Rarities Committee. And there was an eruption of two-barred crossbills. We said, oh, let's go and find some trees, which is always hard in Shetland. And we got there, and I'm not kidding, the minute we got there, this just bobbed up in front of us. I mean, there were three of us. There was a lot of effing and chuffing when we saw this. So great aid for identification. Professor Martin Collinson from Aberdeen University very kindly let me use his cartoon for looking at the different ways of bird recording over the last 200 years. So the black line, if I can point with this mouse, the black line was the bad old days like Hancock, where to identify the bird, you killed it, you shot it, simple as that. In the sort of 1940s onwards, the blue line, basically middle-aged men in tweed jackets with notebooks recording birds, and that was part of the evolution. And since about the 1950s, 60s onwards, with people like Eric Hoskins, the optics in photography have got so much better. So, anybody now can have a digital camera and record a bird. The future, DNA is becoming a lot more prevalent. Is it going to become more boring? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. On identifying birds with photography, there's something called the Carl Zeiss Award. This year, Brian Thomason, my friend in Shetland, he won it. Got some Zeiss binoculars, which was a bit embarrassing because he's sponsored by Swarovski. So I think he was standing at the ferry waiting to sell them to the first person. Anyway, that's off the record. But in the Northeast, we've done very well. 2 years ago, we got 3 runners-up in the top 10. Ross Ahmed, and who else? Jonathan and another person. So we're punching above our weight in the Northeast. Jonathan Faruqi. Photography. You can identify bird rings. It's a real buzz when you send the picture in and somebody says, yeah, that nut came from Holland. Or that marsh harrier near where I live came from Norfolk. And this is a good standby up at Bamborough, at Stag Rocks. Regular gull from Poland came every year. And when you get that email back and it says, oh, that's what's happening, you played that tiny little bit of citizen science. One of our local purple sandpipers that you can see now up at Stag Rocks at Bamborough. And this jumps to another aspect of bird photography. Terrible photograph, but I personally don't think that short-eared owl is having molt. I think it's been shot. And this is where photography does play a role. I do a lot of work with RSBB investigations. They don't bang on. It's sort of a bit under the radar. They're doing a lot of work with hen harriers. I don't know if you saw the Channel 4 programme quite recently where they put in covert cameras and covert listening devices, and they heard some gamekeepers describing how they were shooting hen harriers, and it happened there and then on camera. That is decreasing, which is good, but it's still hard work. I should actually be out tonight monitoring hen harrier roosts. I'm of the opinion that a photograph is worth 1,000 words. Everywhere I go with a landowner permission, I try to give them a photograph. And it's fantastic the way that gets the farmer or landowner to kind of, it becomes their barn owl. And they buy into it, and the keen, oh, will you come up and put a barn owl nest box? So it kind of, it's pushing the conservation picture. This is crackers. This is absolutely crackers. This is a bowerbird in West Papua, and historically they tried to attract a mate with having berries and fruit and fungi and flowers. Now it's plastic. I mean, and you start saying to yourself, where did that bird find all those blue bottle tops? And the colour coordinate them. It's unbelievable. I was a bit naughty. I moved one bottle top when the bird flew away. And when it came back, I could tell the bird was really indignant with what I'd done. And it put it back exactly where it was before. It had a real fetish for blue, this particular bowerbird. I actually saw it fly in with that lid or dish or whatever it is. I mean, crazy. This was really quite interesting. Relatively near where I live, peregrines have nested since at least the 1700s, and nobody used to go to this location. Well, with social media and with COVID, or after COVID rather, this site suddenly was bombarded by 100 cars and barbecues and tents and beer. And I thought, this is wrong with this Schedule 1 protected bird, the peregrine. So I applied to Natural England, got a licence, and I spent hundreds of hours in the cliff. And I maybe overstepped the mark. I was well concealed. But if people started getting closer to the nest site and you could tell the birds were distressed, or the odd person who looked as if they were up to no good, I would just bellow, "Get back, protected area." And it worked every time. It was quite crazy. They just turned around and disappeared. I don't know if they thought it was a sound recorder or what. But when you see the smaller male bring in food for the female, it's fantastic. In fact, that was the year after. The bird on the right, he did really well. He's an immature male, but he still managed to bring enough food in to satisfy the female and the chicks. We all take photographs for memories, you know, when you've been on holiday. I mean, this for me is a great memory. Some of you may recognise him. Brian Little, one of the great ornithologists of the Northeast. He spent all his life on ornithology. Some said he was crackers. I loved him. He was an eccentric for sure. And he could tell the wildest stories ever. When we were ringing this tawny owl, he started telling the story about the oldest tawny owl, which was, I think, 21 years old, and how it got its name Boudica. And this shaggy story went on for about 25 minutes, and the owl fell asleep. I mean, honestly, he was a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. Lovely guy. I've got an estate near me that hasn't got the world's best reputation. We'll just leave it at that. But they have created a habitat for black grouse and waders, and I did a little project, and I gave the estate owner and the gamekeeper a little book about the black grouse, and they're both a bit gruff, but I heard on the grapevine that they were thrilled with this book, and who knows, it might just change some attitudes on some of the less well managed estates. So photography also develops your knowledge. I was doing a hen harrier roost, and I saw this big bird in the distance, huge wings. I thought, what's that? Is it a heron? I thought, no, the beak's not right. Is it a raven? And it got closer. And in West Northumberland, it was a white-tailed eagle, sea eagle, flying from the Isle of Wight up to Scotland, and it was being harassed by a hen harrier. So that was just nice to see. Here's a red kite that thinks it's an osprey. And again, you develop knowledge. An otter used to come to this lake and leave some little fish remains, and scavengers that they are, this red kite was picking up the little bits and pieces. if you like birds in your lifetime, you've got to go and see this. It's the UK equivalent of the Masai Mara wildebeest migration. It's in Snettisham in Norfolk, when particularly high tides during the winter, when you get 140,000 knots who get pushed off the sea because the tide's coming up so much. And they come into this tiny gravel pit that's got a few oyster catchers in. And the oyster catchers are saying, hang on, what's going on here? It wasn't like this last night. Great to see. If you want anybody to get switched on to ornithology, get them to see a kingfisher. I mean, just, you hear them before you see them, but absolutely stunning, stunning birds. You know, it's the sort of nearest we've got to sort of a tropical bird, I suppose, for coloration. We all struggled during lockdown, COVID. And I said, well, okay, I can't go anywhere. What am I going to do? And I decided to study the dipper at my local river. So, yeah, they get wet moss to start building the nest. And I didn't know that they line their nest with a dead beech leaves, but clearly they do. What insects do they feed the young? And I've got scores and scores of pictures, and you just develop your own skill set, and it's very gratifying. And then my mother said to me, you know, she's well into her 90s or what, she said, you know, this woodpecker that keeps coming to my bird feeders, where does it go? I said, well, I don't know. So I found the nest, and we all know that woodpeckers make holes in trees, but how do they make that hole? And I saw it firsthand. I mean, every, 30 minutes, it has a big clear out of the shavings, and it's like confetti at a wedding, and it's absolutely magical to see. And what does a woodpecker eat? I didn't know, but when you get some pictures like this, you can discover that it can eat snails and all sorts of things. And for the undergraduates in the audience who want a new idea for a scientific paper in Northumberland, vegetarian woodpeckers in Northumberland. Or it could be that it just grabbed a leaf when it was getting some insects. But that's for you guys to decide. This is at my house. I got really excited that I had a female kestrel that stayed all winter, and eventually a male pitched up, and I was in a little hide. It was about, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and there wasn't enough light, so I had to have a slow, slow shutter speed, 50th of a second, and I got this blurring action that actually I quite like. So he was a young male, and he just wasn't very experienced, and he struggled with the concept of, I've got to go and catch a mouse or a shrew and then hand it over to my girlfriend. He just didn't quite get that, and he was always a bit hesitant to hand it over. Anyhow, she got a little bit hacked off with this, and she found a more mature male, and a different, again, next to where I live. So they nested in this little cliff, and he was a really good hunter, bringing in voles for the family. And you don't often get to see the top side of a kestrel, and it's his job to bring in the food for the chicks, and that's what you want to see, chicks just about ready to fledge. So that's a job well done. Again, during COVID, I decided to build an owl box, and I maybe got a bit carried away on the size of it because it was 5 meters tall and 2 meters wide. And being sort of, I suppose, pretty involved with the Northumberland Wildlife Trust, I thought, I've got to do this correctly. So I got planning permission for it. And I got my friend to do the planning permission. And then eventually got a phone call from the rating officer. And she said, oh, you've got this building for agricultural storage. I said, no, it's not. I said, it's an owl box. And I discovered that my friend had applied under the agricultural storage because it was a less expensive planning application fee. But she said, well, it's for storing agricultural food stuff. I said, no, it's not. It's for storing bird food in the ground floor. I said, look, you can come and have a look. Just barrels full of bird food for chaffinches and blue tits and grey tits and gold tits. I said, I'll tell you what, I've got an idea. I said, I'll give you the address of the barn owl and you can send the rating bill to the barn owl. And fair play to the woman. But please don't anybody tell the council, but I haven't heard back from them. But really gratifying when you get the young barn owl chicks. You can see one in the window there, and the actual entrance to the box is there. So that was a great sight. And I got the windows from eBay. I think this one, metal frame, it was £28. And the lady said, well, it hasn't got any glass in. I said, oh, great, that's just what I want. And she'd be thinking, these people in the northeast, they're really, really hard, you know. But that's what you want to see. I can never pronounce the word synchronization, where the chicks fledge at different stages, and you can see the little one on the right-hand side there, but they all fledged 2 years ago, and then this last year I got another clutch away that got ringed by Martin Davidson from the Bird Club. This is the most frustrating game ever, trying to photograph a nest of merlins. That they nest in heather, so you can't see them. Invariably, the wind's going in the wrong direction, so when the birds or the female's flying in with the food, you're getting a picture of its backside. And this happens so many times. And eventually, it did come together on this one. So there, female on the right, feeding the chicks. And the chicks are just ravenous. They're just so up for being fed. It's just pandemonium when she flies in, especially just as they've just got to the fledging stage here. Really exciting stuff. You've got to be so quick, otherwise you just miss it. But again, when you see those chicks fledge, that's what it's all about. I like technical photography as well. This, I got a window cleaning rod at B&Q and attached it to underwater housing so you can take an underwater shot. I was also doing photography alongside a young pup. He was a zoology undergraduate at Cambridge, mad keen, and I helped him a bit with his photography. And I said, look, you've got a wetsuit. I've helped you in the photography. Can I borrow your wetsuit? And he was about as thick as my finger. He was a skinny little thing, guy. And his wetsuit had holes in. He probably got it second hand as an undergraduate. Anyway, I've got a bit more winter plumage on. By the time I got it on, these little holes were much bigger. And I got into the North Sea. This was in Shetland. And it was only a 3mm wetsuit. It was cold. But it was just stunning. These birds, being great flyers, are also great swimmers. The underwater world, I can give you a full 1 hour story about diving underwater. It's another world. Here you've got obviously manta rays. In the places of the world where coral is still alive, it is just so vibrant. Turtles, coral. When you've seen dead coral and then you see live coral that's bigger than a man, it is just phenomenal. You're in amongst the fish, you've got clams. It's an amazing experience. If you get the opportunity to go snorkeling or diving, just do it. I'm totally privileged at home that every year, we get barn swallows that come to a little shed that we've got. But the door was a little bit too modern, so I constructed this sort of a bit more old-fashioned door, and I wanted to capture the shot of the bird almost looking bigger than the hole, and it just in and out, in and out, in and out, particularly when they've got the young brood in the nest. It is phenomenal what those birds can do flying. Also on the technical aspect of photography, this is one of those photographs, you either love it or you hate it, Marmite type photograph where I'm not bored with the technical bits, but I just want to show that blue streak of the motion of the dive of the kingfisher. Camera traps. I know that Chris Wren's great advocate of camera traps for the Natural History Museum. He's doing fantastic work. I mean, this is just a hollowed out log camera trap, put some peanuts in, PIR sensor, and let the blue tip take its own picture. Also get a few rats as well, which aren't as nice. And this you can sometimes do. I mean, I hadn't really planned this, it just happened. And I really love this picture. It's a low-key picture, lots of black, but it's very simplistic. But it's another way, maybe a more artistic way, of engaging people with wildlife and birds. This is the opposite, low-key, lying on your belly in Norway, and the bird comes right up to you. I mean, just phenomenal. This is a bit zen-like, just malachite kingfisher in Africa with water behind it. You blow out the water and it just creates an artwork as well as a picture. Now this was crackers. I know we've got them at Gosforth, but my friend said, "You've got to come down here, you've got to come down here. I've got this license, I've got to come down." So I went down. He said, "I've rigged up this hide." And I went towards the hide. He's a dear friend of mine. He's very young. I said, "It's a deck chair underneath the water." He said, "Yeah, you'll be fine." And he told me to bring the waders. And I sort of lay in this deck chair, and it was a horrible sensation because the water went down the back of the waders. Oh, I've got to sit like this for 6 hours. And the shock of the water, I jumped forward and grabbed this little shelf that he hadn't actually secured to the framework that my camera was resting on. The whole lot went up in the air, and I was sort of juggling in the water. Unfortunately, the camera, the camera was saved. But fantastic, Bitterns, marvellous. This is truly crazy, this. We've all heard of David Attenborough and his Birds of Paradise film, and I saw that when I was quite a lot younger. I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take these pictures of these Birds of Paradise. Nobody's done it. So I went to West Papua, and this is a black sicklebill, and it really is hard to photograph. You get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, you go in the jungle up this muddy, slippy, dirty, horrible track to the top of this mountain, and you've got two kind of locals that are helping you, together with a Belgian guide who was married to a local. And the Belgian guide didn't trust the two local guides because they still use the feathers for ceremonial headdresses. So we walked up the mountain and we went past the location that we wanted to get to by about 300 or 400 metres, stopped. We then turned round and went back into the jungle where my friend knew that this bird was. I had 4 attempts. First attempt, it was misty. Second attempt, no show. Third attempt, you've never seen rain like it, just torrential. And the fourth attempt, what happens is I got in a sort of lay on the ground in a bit of a hollow, covered me with a cam net, put vegetation over me, and you would hear the male approach. And I'm not kidding, I didn't move a muscle from 5 o'clock till 8 o'clock, just went click, click, click. And the male would come down because there was a female present, and as males sometimes have a want to do, he wanted to show off. You've seen nothing like it. I mean, that's how he changed shape. He just changed shape. And then he changed shape like that. And you almost think, hang on, is that a bird? So to me, it was one of the best spectacles I've had. Very, very challenging. And it was even more challenging because on the fourth attempt, I heard all of this commotion way down at the bottom of the mountain. And when I went down, my friend said, "What's happening? What's all this about?" He said, "Oh, it's bad." He said, "It's really, really bad." He said, "There's been a road traffic accident and the driver's run off and somebody's been killed." Well, there in West Papua, they don't have insurance like we have. And it's kind of understood that if there's a death, the driver or the person who caused the accident will pay the family of the deceased. And that's generally it. But he'd run off and everybody got a bit excited. And so the next vehicle that came down the road that had a woman in, they shot and killed her with bow and arrows. And also the passenger shot him through the shoulder. And the army and the police were scared to come up. I'm thinking, hang on, I'm the only white face in this village. And suddenly my very precious cameras didn't seem quite so important. And I was thinking of contingency plans, you know, if they decided to take it out on me, how I was going to get out. So there was no option. I had to stay because they'd roadblocked everything. But it didn't make for the most relaxing bird watching that I've ever had for the next 10 days. But some wonderful specimens. This Western Parotia, the male does a ballet dance. It does a ballet dance to impress the ladies. And this sort of yellow and blue crescent, it changes colour as the light refracts off it. This was the superb bird of paradise. It's an okay shot, but that blue thing at the front goes right behind its head that I never got. And I couldn't go to another location where I knew there was one because of all of this tribal unrest. This is a Western Paradiga that what I read is people didn't know what it ate. Well, I discovered what it ate. So it's kind of Wild West stuff, but fantastic. So this is totally switching. That I wanted to develop a technique where I really got low to take the photographs, so that you really felt you were in the grass with the animal. You know, everybody's taken a picture of a lion before, but I really wanted to get in there. And I think if you can see underneath the animal, you know you're low enough, and I think you can always see that it's a male. And you know, you've got the leopards in the grass. You're down below an elephant. The leopard's coming towards you. You don't want to be on the wrong side of the horn. Actually, they're incredibly short-sighted, but they're quite prone to charge, which is never a good combination. Sonia, she's probably got the biggest horn that hasn't been cut off to prevent poaching. Wonderful beast. And when you've got tusks that big, nobody gets in your way. Real privilege being so close to elephants, doing the morning let's go for a drink time. This wasn't so comforting because we were between the elephants and where they were going to drink, and you can see that there's a bit of motion. Young giraffes jostling for who's going to mate. Zebras lend themselves well to black and white. And wild dogs, huge respect for wild dogs. In November I was in Botswana for 3 weeks doing a lot of stuff with wild dogs, and it's exciting and thrilling but horrific at the same time. I saw 3 kills. It's over in about 5 seconds, but it's quite distressing when you see it. Crocodiles. This particular crocodile, it's this interplay between the wild animals and the local population. The local population had put out a net that caught fish that attracted the crocodile for an easy meal. And I've got other photographs where it was totally entangled in the net. So one of those things that isn't nice. photographically, I heard somebody in the audience go, I mean, it's that connection, it's that emotion. If you can create emotion in your photographs, you get that connection, and that's what sells a photograph. It's what empowers it. It's what gets people tied into conservation. You know, this little baby elephant and all the big feet of the parents all around it, you think, well, this could go horribly wrong. Kids playing. You know, who doesn't love a baby cheetah? Another photographic technique, motion blur, that, okay, a springbok standing on the grass is pretty boring, but if you kind of get a motion feeling of how it actually propels itself, it's got a lot more impact. Oh, where's Georgia? I didn't know you were coming, Georgia. I don't know what they are, apart from dung beetles. Imagine spending all of your life rolling that around. He's in charge. Sometimes, you know, you get a near miss with a picture. It was torrential rainfall. This lion was soaking wet. It was dawn, so there wasn't enough light. And he shook his head, and it's okay, the picture, but I could have done so much better. The other thing about photography, it's all about the eyes. If you get the eye contact, it's such an emotive picture. And when your legs are not long enough to get above the tall grass to see your prey, what do? You sit on your backside or stand on your backside. Normally leopards prefer being up a tree for spotting the prey. Or they get up on a termite mound and people are on the termite mound. And once they've made a kill that I happen to know is up the tree that he's looking at, they're loath to leave it. I saw this male leopard actually kill this antelope and dragged it. It was huge. And that leopard has to disembowel that animal and drag it up a tree before the hyenas and lions come along, otherwise it'll lose it. So it's sometimes easier to get a smaller antelope and just get a bit of a quick snack. And then have a rest up the tree yourself. Pardon me. We've all got kittens and cats that have scratched on the sofa to keep your claws sharp. And you need them sharp if you're a cheetah, because when you've got to swipe something, you've got to make it quite decisive. I love this picture, that we should all have a lot more respect for it. It's sort of a story that we should all learn from, how the women do all of the work. They're going out there, they're doing the hunting, and the lazy males are just sitting about. So that's kind of getting right down in the grass as the two females are off to hunt. Another aspect of photography is the light. It's all about the light. And this is where you've got to work hard. I mean, here there's been a kill, so we've got the vulture, we've got the hyena, but it's getting this black lit light that only occurs at dawn. You know, the breath from the lion, it's so much more evocative. And then when you get dust mixed in with the light and dust, it's the magic ingredient. Zebras having a dust bath. It's very long hours when you're into wildlife photography, up at dawn and then stay out till late at night, till sunset. I should have given you a warning on this. So it's not all about going abroad. A guy was putting up a fence for me near Wark Forest. I've got a little bit of land there. And he said, I've discovered some adder skins. And I asked him to explain exactly where they were. And I went back and I was astounded. I mean, they're just so artistic, these adders. There were over 12 adders in two sides the size of a tennis court. And I was privileged enough to see the so-called adder dance, where the males push down the other males with a right for mating. Just wonderful to see. And I'm sure you all know that it's like a fingerprint. Each head marking is totally different. So I identified 12 different adders in that one small area. Badgers, stacks in Northumberland. I haven't given them enough time photographically. This was taken a long time ago near where I live. It was a camera trap that they used to cross the stream on that log. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of hours that I spent trying to get the boxing hares. Eventually it came good and it lasted, 15 seconds, but managed to get that one. And sometimes things can work out in a weird way. I was on a bridle way and some people on those trail bikes came along, and I was really hacked off because I wanted to photograph hares. But as it happened, they chased this hare towards me, and I was lying on the ground. So, in that occasion, it worked out. For a little time, I had a little project to try and photographically show the motion of hares, how the hind legs come to the forefront. This hare thinks it's a kangaroo. And I tried, I used to go out in wet weather because they shake themselves, obviously get the water off, and it gives that idea of motion. I went out at night to get the backlit light. Doesn't really work. It gives a bit of a feeling, but it doesn't really work. And then I tried slow motion stuff just to sort of almost see the shape. I particularly like that one where its hind legs, it's almost like a Catherine wheel. And you can see the spray coming up off the grass. It's not to everybody's liking, but there you go. Fox cubs. I love it. I love fox cubs in May. Just, you've got to be so quiet. The end of this, the farmer, this, you get torn. The farmer said, "So have you finished photographing those fox cubs then?" I said, "Give me another couple of days." And I rang up to say, "I've finished," and I knew what was going to happen. The vixen is much more wary. I mean, there she is. She's clearly lactating. She comes in. The fox cubs run straight towards her to get a drink. But she's obviously seen me. And then that's the dog fox, really, really vigilant. But, gorgeous little things. Deer, stacks of deer in Northumberland. I haven't given them justice. So there's definitely a project there. Don't be put off by bad weather when you're a photographer. A misty day, you can conjure up something. Skylarks. But this is my first love. Owls, love them. Lots of barn owls. In fact, I saw one coming in tonight where I live. You get into the back bottom of a hedgerow, you get positioned, and just when you've got a hunting barn owl coming towards you, it's magic. Some are very, very confiding. Sunset, you get a lovely glow. And then sometimes you're crossing your fingers, saying, "Please, just cast that last little bit of light on the owl." And that half happened. So it's hunting just as the sun's setting. And even once the sun's gone down, you can still grab shots, even though it's harder. Graham Gill, who's a fellow trustee of the Northumberland Wildlife Trust, he planted this plantation, and immediately barn owls started coming because it was great for shrews. At the end of the night, I went home. It was 11:30 in Northumberland. Too low light to really take a picture, but I grabbed one at a 20th of a second, rendered it black and white. It was in amongst the hawthorn trees, and obviously it's not a crystal sharp picture, but it's atmospheric. Have you ever seen those Where's Wally type cartoon things where you look where's the barn owl in the snowstorm? I mean, I was staggered it was still hunting. Actually, Neil Pont, who I'm sure you all know from the Society, he painted a picture of that. He did a good job. And just it forces you to get up at dawn and you see interactions between an owl and a peaweed, an owl in a stately home, a diving owl. And that's what you want to see. You want to see it catching the vole and taking it back. And I hate this shot. It just brings tears to my eyes. I lay in this ditch. It was in March. I knew the owl would hunt, and it came. It had the sun shining through its wings. It caught a vole, was flying towards me. The cross shape of its wings echoed the style in the background, but it's just not sharp enough. I should really just destroy the picture because it just upsets me. And even when that poor barn owl has caught its prey, you then get a gull trying to do klepsism, steal it from it. But that's what you want to see, even though it's just an acidic, sour-tasting shrew, it's taking it home. And this didn't seem fair. I put up a barn owl box for my best friend late in the season. It was about February, and in April he got 6 chicks just straight away. I mean, it was great, really, but I wish it had happened in my backyard. Little owls, a little bit harder to see, but we have them in Northumberland. They've got such character. They're small, feisty little things, but they've got character. Short-eared owls, probably my favourite UK owl, let's say. You hope they're going to arrive in March to the uplands. Just the eyes are just so evocative. I'm going quite fast because I know time's marching on. Territorial displays that you get in March, and you can get other times of the year, they're always exciting to see. Oops. Baby chick. They leave the nest very early, but they're feisty. Here you've got a black-faced sheep having a standoff with this little baby owl. This was so frustrating. These short-eared owls had fledged. There were 6 of them. And I saw the male coming with food, and each time I tried to track it, and it just wasn't working. So in the end, I focused on one owl. I said, sooner or later, he's got to bring the food to that one. And after about, I think it was 4 or 5 hours, I can't remember, it did bring it in. And that's taken with a 1200mm lens, so it was a long way away. They're very curious, the young. Long-eared owls, probably the hardest ones to photograph because they're nocturnal. They have this ability that I think they can turn 270 degrees round the back and then also sideways. So they're using the offset ears to pinpoint what's going on. Fantastic claws. And this was just lucky. It was 5 o'clock in a summer morning, beautiful meadow, long-eared owl. And this was bonkers. It was at 10 o'clock at night, and there was a baby owl just sitting on a branch, and I just sensed it might somehow get fed. So I changed all my camera positions, and I had a tripod, and peripherally I saw something out the side, and I just went, drrrr, just pressed the button, took about 45 seconds, and got the shot. And in 45 shots per second, and it was 2 seconds from the owl being in to the owl being out, so fast. And then the baby just didn't really seem to know what to do with the ball again. This was a conservation project that my friends set up it was down country for long-eared owls, And I sat all night, and there were 12 food passes during the night. It was magnificent. Jesmond Dean, if you want to go down, you'll find it roosting. And that's what you want. You want a baby tawny owl to fledge. My friend, he actually feeds them to help them out down in Norfolk. And this is a terrible photograph, the next one is rather. This is at my house. I don't know why this tawny owl was out early, but clearly the swallow didn't like it. Terrible photograph, but it just shows how they get mobbed. This is up in the Cheviot. You get a lot of snowy owls. I wish. I had to go to Canada to get that, and I was really disappointed that there was no snow. Just a tiny bit of snow. But it had an advantage because there was a male there. If there'd been a lot of snow, hunting would have been harder, and the larger females would have driven off the males. But I was privileged to see the male, and not a great photograph, but a male with Canada geese is unusual because the Canada geese would, if there'd been snow, they would have disappeared. So to have that combination was strange. But wow, when you see snowy owl, something else. My friend in Finland rang me and he said, Conrad, you've got to get out here and get out here now. Perfect for you. So I went 7 hours in 7 nights. The first night it was lashing it down. I thought, no way am I going to see this eagle owl. And that's how the eagle owl gets rid of the rain. Unbelievable size. Just when you see an eagle owl close up, it just dwarfs everything else. Then a great grey owl, I love those as well. This particular hide, I was in for 14 hours and it was smaller than a telephone box. And I realised that when I got out after 14 hours, I'd lost the use of my legs and I had to jump across a stream. And it was only about that wide and my legs just stopped working. And I didn't have the confidence to take the jump because I knew I'd fall in the stream. So I just had to give them a good massage. But when you see an owl this big feeding its chicks at the nest, it's a bit like The Exorcist facing the wrong way around because it heard me hawk owl. Again, just going in to grab a mouse underneath the snow. And this hawk owl, it fledged 9 chicks. This little runt of the litter was left in the tree. The rest were all just in a 200-metre area. I couldn't believe it. I don't even know what sort of car it is. It was just an old car, and this would have landed on the old car. This one you've really got to be careful. This is a Ural owl, probably the most aggressive owl in Europe. If it's got chicks, it will attack you. This one was fortunately on eggs. This is in a forest, 4 o'clock in the morning, raining. But the male, you could hear him, he gave a whoop just before he came in and fed to her. And she sort of pops up her head, grabs the bowl, and then they heard me. And I just froze. They both looked at me. I thought, if I make a movement here, one of them will attack me. So I kept very, very still, and off it flew. Tengelmann's owl, or boreal owl, tiny little owl, totally nocturnal, but an amazing hunter. If she hears the slightest noise, she'll peep out of the hole to see what's going on. And he just brought in mouse after shrew after vole. It was phenomenal. Because of it's just, I didn't want to use flash, these owls. So you get motion blur, but you get the picture when he's delivering the prey. And then the last one, the pygmy owl, tiny, scrupulously clean. You know, he cleans the nest out. But the size of a large sparrow. There it's coming into the nest hole with some prey. And there it's got this huge lizard, looking quite pleased with itself. But I still love the cold. And 2 o'clock in the morning in Norway in April, when the capercaillie just wake up and you hear that clack, 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 clack of its bill, and you're in this sleeping bag, you know, I've got to get out this sleeping bag. And then the first ray of sunshine, you see it, and it's making this display to impress the females. It's mind-boggling to see it. And we've got rough in Northumberland, but you don't get displays like that. You know, two rival males having a bit of a tussle. Iceland. The foxes, they're not hunted in the northwest corner. They scavenge along the beach twice a day at low tide. And they're not afraid, so you can get some really quite close-up shots. Lying in the snow, yeah, a bit cold, but it's worth it. It's quite a challenge going out to the northwest of Iceland in February, right into the Atlantic Ocean. There were there's brown paper bags used by us. I prefer the foxes when they're white. That's in Ellesmere Island. Again, actually quite tame. And they have a skipping motion where all the feet leave the ground at the same time. You can tell it's -50. I wish we got them like that on the Farne Islands. You've got to go to northern Norway, which I'm going to in March this year, to the Varanger. When the puffins arrive and they're territorial, they're fighting for nest space and they're rolling down the hill. Long-tailed ducks. I mean, we've got common eider, but when you see a king eider, wow, it's like on steroids. It's always a challenge as a photographer to try and do white on white, sort of for your exposures, but that's a ptarmigan. Arctic hare. Game of hide and seek in the high Arctic. Incredibly tame because they've never seen people. To get a photograph like that, I nearly got frost nip on my fingers because to get everything aligned up and the hair just sitting there, it's not straightforward. Again, Finland with wolves. And actually it was quite funny, I was in this hide actually. And I'd been put in this hide by myself, and next door there were some Danish people. And we'd been told to be very quiet because the bears had just come out of hibernation. And I looked out of the side window, and it was a bit dark, but I could see all the Danish people jumping about. I mean, what's the matter with these people? They'd been told not to make a noise and just keep quiet. They're complete idiots. So I'm looking out the side window, and I suddenly turned round and realised that it was not the Danish people next door. It was the reflection of the bear that was just there in front of me, being reflected in that window. Got the shock of my life, actually. Svalbard. I love going there for polar bears, especially in September because you get great light in September. You know, this is 3 o'clock in the morning, bear on the beach. You go out in the Zodiac boats at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you get this backlight on the bear. I mean, it just makes it, you know, fantastic. And they're pretty hungry. I mean, this big male, he found this, I mean, who would eat that? He found this whale carcass, and he was not going to leave this whale carcass till he'd completely eaten it. And you realise the power. He just decided he was full, and he just walked up this. Oops, gone the wrong way. Sorry about that. Wrong way. He just walked straight up the cliff. This female hunting along the shore, scavenging a bit, looking for washed up stuff, looking for seals. The regulations have all changed as of this last January in Svalbard. You can't get closer than 500 metres now. Wonderful animals. Obviously I've seen plenty, but not tried to photograph them as much in the past, so it was nice to have the opportunity. I've overshot by, I think, 4 minutes, but that's probably a good place to end an owl in the sunset. So I think I've overshot a bit, Claire, sorry about that.